Welcome to Two Deep, Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast brought to you by McCoy's Auto Repair in Radford, Virginia. Thank you, McCoy's, for sponsoring our show. Virginia Tech won the bye week. Robbie had a little bit of a conflict. If he can join, he'll hop in. But for now, you're just going to get a double dose of me this week solo, and that's all good. I think we needed the bye week. And Andy Bitter made the joke, does the bye week ever come at a bad time? Probably not. No, but we got it just about at the midway point, a little further than the midway point, which I think I'd rather have it right around here, maybe a little bit later than rather than too early. However, maybe we could have used it earlier in the year based on how our offense was going and based on the changes we made. Nevertheless, I think VT is the healthiest it's been since Allie Jennings went down. And Syracuse, I think, feels like they're pretty healthy too. But that's okay. We're going to have a good game on Thursday night. Both teams are refreshed and ready to go. Let's hop into the news and notes. I don't have a ton here. I went over the AP poll in detail on Monday. There are 4 ACC teams ranked, and I'll pop it up on the screen for you guys. I did note that JMU popped into the rankings, and that made some news this week with our future schedules because there was some movement there. And no, the future schedules don't look particularly exciting, but that's not something I'm going to cover tonight. I'll go over with that with Rob at another time. Depth chart injury update. The only thing I noticed on the depth chart that was Cole Nelson was ahead of Burgos at one of the defensive end spots. And he did seem to play well last week. And so everything else was as it was before. Now, there were things that happened in the game where we had a different will linebacker. We had a different defensive tackle starting in Payne. So again, the depth chart is not quite matching up with what we end up seeing on the field, but some of that could be the play that they're running and they just decide to run a different guy out there. But we did see the McDonald brothers start at will over Kelly Lawson last week, and both guys played pretty well. And so maybe they're changing up some more things this week. Maybe it'll be back to Kelly and Fugger or Kendricks or whoever was starting before at the defensive tackle position. I don't have any injuries to note, so that's good going into this week. As I said before, CFB Monday, I was solo this week. It was a good show, I thought. Next week, I should have a guest. We'll see how it goes after I get back from Blacksburg. But I really enjoy covering the bigger picture of college football. So if you want more of my notes on what happened with the AP poll, go there and listen to the show. It's always appreciated. And remember, one of the reasons I'm doing that show this year is for the live purpose to get people to tune in and to get some more subscribers for the Sons of Saturday channel. And that's honestly a courtesy to you guys, because if you subscribe, you're going to get so much more content throughout this year. In fact, I'm going to be helping the Suns with their Slam Jam. Yes, that is the media car wash type thing we are doing at Hahn-Hurst with the basketball team on Thursday. So that is going to be awesome. I'm grateful to be a part of it. Be down in Blacksburg with the guys. So it's a business trip, but then we are going to have some fun watching the game together. I cannot wait. I leave tomorrow. Pick'em leaders. Some spread, is all alone in first place, 49-31. That is a tremendous record. Hokie Hustler, one game behind him, and then there's a little bit of a gap with everyone else. But some spread, Good job, 49-31. I am jealous because I stink. No game recap this week and no voicemails. Now, we did get a call from Hokie Hack, or when Google does the transcription and it comes in Hoagie Hack. He called saying he gives his students extra credit. It was a little hard to hear him because he might have been in the classroom or whatever. Gives his students extra credit if Tech wins and UVA loses. And he had already given them extra credit last Friday, and then UVA ended up winning. Let him keep the extra credit, because what UVA did by winning was get us back in this ACC title race, right? Because it made UNC catch a loss in the ACC. So let them keep that extra credit. Two Deep reaction line. When the game is going on, when it's over, if you're tailgating, call 540-251-2600. 2169 this Thursday to get your call into our reaction line, and we'll play it next week on the podcast, or at least a snippet of it. All right, let's hop in. Before I talk about my beer, before I talk about the sponsor, I'm going to give you some notes about Syracuse because FPI has loved this team since August. I don't know why, and they still love them right now. So they started out the year number 34 in the FPI. Syracuse did. 5th in the conference. Seemed a little too high at the time. Right now, they're 37th. So despite losing 3 games in a row, including back-to-back butt kickings, they're still 37th in the FPI. Oh, I might have Rob join in the chat here in a second. But yes, the Kali Matrix has them at 62, which I think is actually more correct for them because they have been stinking it up lately. And Sagarin has them at number 58. So I'm not sure what it is about the FPI that likes Syracuse so much, but I'm not buying it. And I'm going to get into some of the details as to why. Let me see if I got this guy here. Not there he is. There he is.
Hey, I made it. Sorry.
Well, let me get my headphones on. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Switch your mic input for me. I was just getting to some of the notes on Q's. I mentioned the AP poll, I mentioned our pick'em winners, and now I just hopped into Q's and talking a little bit about how the FPI has loved them all year, but some of the other rankings have them more appropriate, like right in the middle of FBS. Like Sagarin has them at 58. What's your perception of how Q's is doing this year? And what's your take on like their wins, their losses, what you got over there?
Certainly they have struggled as of late. Two tough games, I guess, in their past shows. Really 3, if you want to count the Clemson game before that. But they just got absolutely manhandled in their last 2 games. But I don't know why they would be ranking them that way. This team reminds me a lot of Wake Forest in a lot of ways. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their red zone defense. They kind of had, they bow up a lot in the back if they get into a tough spot, and I think they have like a top 15 red zone defense. So I don't know. I don't think there's anything that I see on paper or in film and watching the games that makes me see why one ranking system would be rating them that highly, other than they have a good running game, they have a running quarterback, and their defense is pretty good in the red zone, but that's about it.
It must have been them just kicking Colgate's butt, right? Like what? I'm just trying to think because I'm looking at the stats. They racked up a lot of their stats against the poor competition at the beginning of the year. And I realize one of those poor competition notes is Purdue, a team that beat us. But I think we're all aware that Purdue wasn't a very good team. We had an injured quarterback for the entire second half of that game. We had a rain delay, weird game. They played Colgate, they played Western Michigan, Purdue, and I think I'm blanking on the last one, but it was another weak game. And so as they've gotten into ACC play, they've been done no favors because they've played Clemson, they've played UNC, and they've played FSU, and they have just taken it on the chin the last 3 weeks, in particular the last 2 weeks, as you mentioned. And I do appreciate how you are ready to go, right? I threw you right into the fire after you hopped in there, man. Welcome to the show.
I may be late, but I'm ready to go, especially when it comes to the orange.
This is their 3rd consecutive away game when they come to Lane. They won't be home at all for a game in October, which is really bizarre. 2 years ago when we played this team, do you remember what happened in that game?
Yeah, I think
like right at the end there.
Yeah, didn't they make a comeback right at the end? They scored 2 touchdowns and then ran it in, right at the end to beat us, I think.
Yeah, I think we were up 10, and Alford had that catch with 19 seconds left, and Alford is still on the team. And that's something I'm when I look at this team, I look at Schrader. Obviously, he takes the headlines because he's been their quarterback for a handful of years now, and he looked improved last year. I think there may be a little bit of regression with him this year. His passer rating is down. His QBR is a little down. He hasn't been good in any of the 3 ACC games. I will say they've been against good teams, but only 42 rush yards the last 3 games. That's his bread and butter, is the run game. And so I like to see that. I am concerned that with the way our rush defense has played, that this might be the game for him to get right in the run game.
Yeah, I'm worried. I mean, he did a number on us last go round. I think in his last 2 games, they did a good job scouting this team, and they looked at it and they said the only thing that this team really had, not only thing, but the strength of this team really is they have a good mobile quarterback and they have a decent run game, and we're just going to stuff it, and that's it. And they managed to contain it. That is an awesome game plan and would give me a lot of comfort, except we've struggled with the running quarterback. I think it was I read in one of the previews, but it was really funny. They were talking about Kelly Lawson previewing the team, and he was like talking about how this isn't the first mobile quarterback that we faced this year, and it was like, yeah, but you didn't do so great against. It may not be the first that you've seen, but he almost said it as though, yeah, we've kind of done it already and we're good. It hasn't gone all that well, so
No.
it's a little bit frightening for me.
It hasn't gone well. However, I would say that most of the damage in the run game has been from the running backs.
Yep.
But we saw Wimsat have a good game against us. Francher had some runs.
Yep.
But yeah, that's going to be a huge point of emphasis, I would imagine, for our defensive staff, is to make sure we don't let this team beat us on the ground. A few more comments on Schrader before we talk about his weapons. Against FBS this year, he has 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So the other handful of touchdowns that he has, I think it was 4 touchdown passes, came against Colgate. And he had 6 rushing touchdowns, all prior to ACC play. And so it's really been a tale. And this is exactly what happened to Syracuse last year, right? Started out really good, hit the skids, and they finished absolutely terrible. We might be seeing the start of that right now. And part of that is because Sean Tucker is gone. They're all conference running back. And Gadsden, the tight end that they expected to have this year, is done for the year with an injury. So those 2 guys being out of this offense have really depleted some of their options. But there is still some guys I worry about here. What do you see on the sheet there?
And just to finish the point that you had, this is reminiscent of when Bill Colony talks about how like the preseason stats start to fade as the season goes on.
Yeah.
It almost seems like we're some of the stats from earlier in the season against non-ACC opponents are still getting factored in to some of the standings. I see Allen, their running back, is good. He's got over 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. Interestingly, they only have 2 rushing touchdowns on the year, and those have come from Schrader and from Allen. Then nobody else has scored. So they have Schrader has 6, I think, on the ground, and Allen has 7 on the ground.
That's a lot of touchdowns. Like
yes.
one a game, basically.
Yeah, it's a monster. He's also caught the ball 23 times, has about over 150 yards in receiving. There's not much to speak of in terms of kind of backups. It really, I hate to say this and then get burned by somebody else, but it's kind of a 2-man race for this offense, and watching what they do, because the wide receiving targets for this team are, they have 9 guys for this orange offense that have scored touchdowns. Only 2 people have scored more than 1 touchdown receiving for the team. That's Hatcher and Jones, and they've only caught 2. So it's not as though they have a lot of threats. They've been spreading it around, and I think it's mostly out of necessity, because there is not a ton that they have in the pass game and receiving that's all that dangerous. So my focus is on those 2 guys, the running back and on Schrader, and hopefully somebody else doesn't pop up and have a great day.
I was talking about our depth chart earlier, and there wasn't too many changes. for Syracuse, I noticed something in their depth chart that Isaiah Jones is supposed to be back at the wide receiver position.
Mm.
He played well in the first 2 games. He's 6'4". Alfred is 6'6". Hatcher is 6'3". So both of their tight ends have gone down, but they have some size at the wide receiver position, and that could be a problem. We don't have that big body. I mean, maybe a Dante Lovett is pretty big. Braylon Johnson, I think, might be 6'2", but tall receivers, that's tough to deal with sometimes. And they like Alfred and Hatcher have been solid, but I totally hear what you're saying. The ability for Schrader to be super efficient passing the football just hasn't been there this year. And
Right.
so they haven't been as much of a threat. They're there though. And you never know when they're like Alfred's going to go off or, Jones is going to come back from this injury and be good. Their offensive line, 69th in TFL allowed per game, 103rd in sacks allowed. So they have given up a lot of sacks. That's probably Schrader trying to do too much at times, trying to extend plays out of the pocket and getting sacked. But that's good because we just saw a team against Wake Forest where we were able to generate a lot of pressure. APR could have a good game. Overall, I do worry about the ability for them to run the ball, and I worry a little bit about that size, but it's not a prolific offense. It's 65th in yards per play. And against the P5, less than 5 yards per play. Against conference, almost 4 yards per play. So it's lately they have really struggled to move the football, and that's a good thing for us.
Yeah. I think I talked about Wake Forest and the comparisons to them, as you just said. That's another one. Not a great offensive line and prone to give up havoc to opposing defenses. So fingers crossed, if we could have another defensive performance like we just did, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So it sets up well.
Before we talk about the Syracuse defense, I want to take a moment to mention our sponsor. Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence is brought to you by McCoy's Auto Repair in Radford, Virginia. Who doesn't love supporting a local family-owned and operated business? That's what you get with McCoy's. They were established in 1980, and they offer full service, including major and minor repairs, oil changes, state inspections, brake work. They can rebuild your engine. They can rebuild your transmission. They have fleet service, and they service anything. They also sell tires, which is an important thing this time of year. They have optional pickup and drop-off service if you can't get to the shop from work, which is super convenient. So make sure you head to McCoy's this fall or over the winter for all of your vehicle maintenance needs. Or you can give them a call. You can see the number right on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, 540-639-2933. And you can also find them on Facebook. Super easy find. Just like that old Hokie buddy of yours, McCoy's is a name you can trust. Rob, are you drinking anything over there?
I'm not. It's been a long, long day, hence me being late. So
it's all good, man.
Just green tea. That's all I'm going with. How about you?
This is what I'm having tonight. This is the Country Pumpkin from Ithaca, and this was a gift from Basil.
Oh,
This is when he came up to the Rutgers game. He handed me some pumpkin beers, and it was September. I could have drank them then, but I've been saying I'm going to have a pumpkin beer, and this is my last chance in October before this game. So it's pretty good. I would say there's no percent alcohol on the can, but it drinks about at a 6%. And
wow.
when I was thinking about that, I was kind of thinking like, could I guess within 0.3 of any beer what the percent alcohol is by taste? Probably
Right.
I'd probably miss some, but I bet you I'd get pretty close. But this Country Pumpkin, it's solid, but it's not too heavy on spice. It's not too heavy on sweet. It's right down the middle malt wise, so I can get down with that. But there's nothing about it that's like, that's great. It's just like an average pumpkin beer. But nevertheless, Basil, I really do appreciate you giving me this one. He also gave me some other IPAs and stuff, which I may have on. And now I'm walking the line between will they be fresh when I drink them because I want to drink them on the pod, but I have had a couple in the meantime because he gave me a ton. I mean, that's so generous. So again, shout out to him for giving me this beer. The Country Pumpkin, I would recommend it for a tasting if you're doing a tasting of pumpkin beers, but I wouldn't necessarily buy a 4-pack up.
Little play on country bumpkin, I guess that is. That's a clever
I didn't even
name.
think of that. Yeah,
Yep.
you might be onto something there, Rob.
Yep.
All right, let's see here. Defense.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this Rocky Long coach defensive unit?
Confused. That a good way to put it? So, um, the pretty decent rush defense, terrible pass defense, and the potential maybe for us to maybe air it out a little bit. I think their real struggle, the defensive line is serviceable. The linebackers are really good. One of their corners is good, the others is not, and they're really struggling at safety. And so that it is a very Jekyll and Hyde situation that we have going on here. Pretty good havoc numbers, and then giving up a ton on the back end. So it's a little all over the place. Is kind of my higher level, but let's hop into the specifics.
Yeah, so one nugget I heard on Colby's show this week, he was talking about Rocky Long, and
Mhm.
he mentioned Bud Foster has been on their show a couple times. And
Oh,
so they've interviewed Bud, and they're like, "Who do you like to watch when you're just chilling in your own time?" He's like, "Well, I like to watch my defensive coaches. I like to watch Gary Patterson coach." Like, this was a couple years ago. And he's like, "I always like to see what Rocky Long's doing because he's on the
mhm.
cutting edge. He's always innovating." And I thought that was really interesting.
Interesting.
And he is a good coach. And so I do worry about him watching what we've done with Kyron Drones these couple weeks and having something new for Kyron to deal with.
Mhm.
I don't know how
Yes,
I cannot break that
Kyron.
habit. Kyron. But the linebackers for this team are solid. I think that is their best unit on defense. Marlo Wax, Leon Lowry, both playmakers, both with a lot of tackles for loss. In fact, Lowry leads them in sacks on the season. It's only 3.5, but he leads them in sacks from the linebacker position, and he has an additional 3 hurries. But those two guys make a lot of plays. Their D line has a couple playmakers. I noticed Ocheku, he was a guy who last year had over 10 tackles for loss, and this year he's putting up some numbers again. Darton has 3 sacks on the year. It's a against the run, it's a
Yeah.
decent defense. I think you're right in that they have some weakness against the pass, despite having Elijah Clark at Rover has made some plays.
Yeah.
Barron kind of
Mhm.
fills the stat sheet in a number of ways. He's got pass breakups, he's got tackles for loss, he's their free safety, but I don't think their corners are great. Jeremiah Wilson has been he has like an or designation at their corner, so I think they're kind of playing around with a couple different guys. Uh, but they can be had a bit. And if Kyron can build on what he did in the pass game against Wake Forest, where Tyler Bowen made him throw the ball and he was efficient, I think this could be a good game for him in that regard.
I agree. It is confusing. The team has. If I told you that a team that has 20 sacks, 51 tackles for a loss, 6 interceptions, 6 forced fumbles, and is ranking near in the top of the nation in a lot of those stats, you'd be like, man, that's a really good foundation
I
for a
know.
defense. And then you go through their overall defensive performance and where they're susceptible, and it kind of mashes together into being like an okay defense. I think um Rocky Long, I think, is what makes me concerned here, because this would be an opportunity to come out and show that same game plan that you did against Wake Forest. And I think he's going to have them prepared for that. And so I think they may find some success in really in thwarting that, and we got to find some real avenues on the ground to be successful. And we've had times where we've done that, but it's been spotty, and the times that it has gone well have typically surrounded Drones being able to do it with his feet. The running backs have been good, but it's been as a part of Drones being mobile in that defense. So
Yes.
it'll be, I'm kind of excited. I'm excited to see the chess match in what we bring out and what he's prepared for with this defense.
Yeah, no doubt. You put it perfectly. Like, I want to see how the early stages of this game go, because can Drones' feet help break down this defense, or does he scheme it up real good? I do think between Jones and Tootin, those are guys that can make a play beyond a scheme, and what holds us back is the O-line, as we know. And that's what worries me the most with Long, is because if he finds a way to knife through this offensive line and get to our guys before they can have some open field or a chance to shimmy and shake, like, that's going to be a problem. The good news, their D has given up 31, 40, and 41 in their last 3 games. I mean, they've gotten beat by 2 or 3 scores in all of those games against good ACC competition.
Yep.
I think they can be passed on. I think they can be rushed on to a point. And both UNC and FSU had about 200 yards rushing on this team.
Yep.
And I know they're better teams than us, despite UNC's recent loss. But that's encouraging, right? It means we could be able to use our run game the way we want to, and do it. But it's not a bad defense by any means.
Yep, I would agree with that. So, well, we'll see how it plays out. Let the chess match begin between these two.
Let's just mention the special teams real quick, because they have a decent punt returner.
Mm-hmm.
He's, I want to say, like 23rd, between 25 and 30 or something in the country, but ours is better. Tucker Holloway, 6th nationally in punt return average, which I would not have guessed. Now, it hasn't been a ton of returns because they haven't used him all the time, but still, that's pretty darn impressive. 6th in the country.
It's interesting with punt returners now, because I feel like with the talent levels, punt returns have become so much more subdued in terms of, or impactful overall, that the differential between being good and just not being good is kind of razor thin, right? It's probably a few yards that can make the difference between.
It's one missed tackle, right? Like, because that one missed tackle gets you 20, and then that helps your average.
Yep.
That, you're right. It's a very fine line, and that's why you take those rankings with a grain of salt. But after you get 6, 7, 8 games in, I think you can give them a little bit more credence. Overall, I said off the top, both teams are coming off their bye. It's not a full bye because we're playing on Thursday night, but all of that travel for Syracuse, I mean, we're talking UNC back to Syracuse, Florida State back to Syracuse, and now to Blacksburg, which isn't an easy place to get to, all in less than 3 weeks. That's a lot, man.
That's a murderer's row. I wouldn't want it, and I wouldn't be in this. It was like Arkansas, where they have like 5 games in a row when they were on the road or something like that. So, it's a tough spot, and if I were them, I'd be looking forward to getting back home for a few games come November. So I think we catch them in a good spot, despite
the cozy confines of the dome.
Yes, the cozy confines of Syracuse. If you could make that, but it's still true. I mean, that's got to wear you in, and the teams that they played, they have got to be relatively gassed at this point. We'll see if they have one last gasp in them, but they're probably ready to get back and heal up a little bit.
Schrader is more of a threat with his legs. These are just some of my final thoughts. And there's some decent skill talent, so we have to play well against the run to win this one. Their defense is solid. We talked about that. But they have gotten exposed. They've given up almost 1,200 yards the last 2 weeks. UNC put up 644 on this Syracuse team. 644 is insane. FSU actually had more yards per play than UNC because UNC ran a ton of plays. FSU had 7.3 yards per play on this team.
Wow.
And so that's what they just did. This is their most. Colgate was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they looked spectacular. They looked great against Purdue. They looked great against Western Michigan. This team has not been playing great. They've been reeling. Does the bye week give them a chance to reset, or are we going to pick up where those other teams left off? I hope it's the latter.
Me as well.
Don't let Schrader beat you with like his legs, right? We want to shut that down and make him beat us with his arm.
Yeah, make him throw the ball. And I think who make them throw the ball. The linebackers, I think, for Virginia Tech are where this game's going to be won or lost. Is and not even yes, it would be great if the defensive line can really show up against what's a relatively poor offensive line and cause some havoc. But in terms of where the damage could happen, it could be Schrader getting some momentum on the outsides and maybe some bad angles or bad pursuit or missed tackles, and that could be a real game changer.
We need to win this one.
Yes.
And I kind of said last week was not a must win. It was a we gotta win. This is kind of in that we gotta win category because prize in year 2, we've shown a little bit of improvement, and a bowl isn't everything, but it would be really, really nice. And so this is another gotta win game. And we're at home Thursday night, bowl eligibilities. It's kind of on the line. I mean, I
Yeah.
know we could win 3 after this if we were to lose, but it's going to make it statistically tougher. We talked about that.
Yeah, it's going to make it real difficult. Then this is the game. This is your best shot at chalking one up. I think that the next 3 are going to be tough.
Yeah. The line right now is VT -3.
Yeah.
And I will say, Colby took the Hokies on his show.
Oh no, that's
That-
because
but
he's just doing us. He's doing us a solid.
that's a
I
good
think
thing.
there.
No, he didn't. There was no mention of us. He was, he doesn't, we had him on. He's past us,
Yeah.
but you know how he takes his picks seriously.
Yes, he does. Yeah, that is for us. This is a still somewhat of a hobby. For that is his livelihood. That's
It's
how
his
he makes
full-time
money.
job. Yeah.
Yes.
Stats of War gives us a 63.5% chance. That's Parker on Twitter. 63.5% chance to win. SP Plus has us at 49%. And one of our listeners commented on our Twitter page and was pointing that out. And so basically a 50-50 shot with the SP Plus. And then FPI, I had talked about how much they like Syracuse, and that's kind of why I mentioned it. It's because FPI only gives us a 39% chance of winning this one at home. And so you've got the full gamut there. You've got 63, you've got 49, you've got 39. So it flip a coin because
Averages out to a coin flip.
yeah, as much as I feel good about what we've done to beat Pitt the way we did, beat Wake Forest the way we did, even come back against Florida State when seemed like we were dead in the water to show some life there. I think all of Hokie Nation who follows the team closely feels good going into this game.
Yeah.
And looking at some of what Syracuse isn't just dead. They're not just reeling. They're not like they're a decent team with a decent defense. So it's probably a coin flip.
Yeah, I would agree. I like the Hokies, but if somebody wanted me to bank on this, I would say a coin flip is exactly right. It's a coin flip of whether the defense kind of shows up and whether Drones has some success in the pass game, and if he can't, whether or not the run game for Virginia Tech, we can fall back on it.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to our picks, I'm going to do an ad read, Rob, but why don't you just think of a cheers since I didn't get a cheers from you earlier, and then we'll do our picks. So the 2 Deep Hokies Under the Influence podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks. It's a daily fantasy app that allows you to make plays on our very own Hokies players. So you can get some action on Jalen Lane. You can get some action on Bayshal Tootin, maybe even Kyron. You can also do NBA. It's coming back very soon. MLB's in the playoffs. My Phillies, Game 7 tonight. So make sure, get some money in your pocket. Lots of opportunities with Prize Picks. Use code MEMORYLANE for a deposit match up to $100. That's Memory Lane, all one word. It's a great app. Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. And Rob, give us a cheers.
I got to go with the Thursday night cheers. I mean, probably some of the most memorable moments that I had at Virginia Tech were Thursday night games. Teachers letting you out a little bit early on Thursday, a couple others maybe turning a blind eye to you, maybe bringing a a spiked drink into class. I mean, the Thursday
With the
night game.
Yetis nowadays, it'd be so easy.
Oh yeah, it's like you would have no clue. We had to do like the big Slurpee cup, which was just it was like, what are you, a 5-year-old, or are you drinking in my class? Um, so I got to go with the Thursday night. It's iconic. It is a big part of what makes Virginia Tech Virginia Tech. It's what got us on the national stage back in the Big East days because of those Thursday night games. So I got to go with it, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, man. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
One other thing before we get to the picks. I went on eBay last week after a couple beers, and I put this all out on Twitter saying, I found this jacket. It was a starter jacket from the 90s. It was my size,
Wow.
or at least I figured it would fit. And so put in the offer, go through that process. I get the jacket. It gets delivered the other day. I was hoping it would come before I go down to Blacksburg tomorrow, and it did. And I got this note with it from this woman, Elizabeth, who said, like, my dad bought me this jacket in the 90s. He was a Corps of Cadet at Virginia Tech. I ended up going to William and Mary, but this jacket meant a lot to me. He has since passed, and I'm moving to Florida, so I don't need it anymore. Please take good care of it, blah, blah, blah. Elizabeth. And she doesn't know who bought it or whatever.
Right.
And so I sent her a note back saying, like, listen, I couldn't be a bigger Tech fan, do a podcast, whatever. My dad passed away several years back. I have an Eagles jersey that he bought for me. And so like we kind of had this exchange, and
Yeah.
it was cool,
That's
and like
awesome.
that is Hokie Nation to a T. Like I thought it was going to be some person in a foreign country who's been stockpiling starter jackets since the 90s, with some, just trying to pawn them for money. No, there was like a message that came with the jacket. So it ended up being an even better purchase than I thought it could have been. And I look absolutely ludicrous in the jacket because it's a jacket from the 90s. I'll show on YouTube. I'll put up the picture of me wearing it. Hold on one
That
second.
is awesome. So good. Look at the colors. That is such a 90s jacket too.
I look like Puff Daddy in that.
Yeah.
Like like in the music video with the big jacket,
Yeah. And
we've got
looks like you have like wings, like you're a bird.
those starter jackets, like they had like the big sleeves or something.
I know.
But
Incredible.
I had a Penn State one when I was a kid, and this is it's virtually identical to the one I had, but it's Virginia Tech, which is freaking awesome. It's got the pouch too that you can just fill with Wild Turkey bottles.
That's going to be fantastic.
I was amazed at like the condition it was in. It's like in immaculate condition, which
really,
I'm probably going to do more damage to this thing in 2 football weekends than the last 25 years combined. But
you got to take care of it though. I mean,
I'm going to try to be extremely careful with it. It was her prized possession, and now it is my prized possession.
Yes. Yeah. Very important. So
But
that's a cool
all
story.
that stuff, like the Suns posted it to they saw my tweets and they're like, oh, can we post this to our Instagram account? And like, it's gotten like 1,200 likes on Instagram because I was like, oh, I just bought this jacket. I'm drunk, whatever. And it's kind of just a cool story and an aside for the end of this podcast because we didn't have as much content since it wasn't a recap and a preview.
I love it.
The picks, Rob. We got Florida State going to Wake Forest. 20.5-point underdogs are the Demon Deacons. They have been struggling, but they did get a crazy win against Pittsburgh last week. What are you taking in that game?
They got a crazy win. I mean, it's such a big spread. These spreads are so big. I'm going to go with FSU in this one. I think 3 touchdowns seems about right on what they could put up on this Wake team, especially with Wake's defensive line or offensive line and what the FSU team could do to them.
Yeah, that is a concern. And it was weird because Pitt only had 2 sacks against them. I didn't understand that. The way Narduzzi likes to bring heat. So I don't know what Wake was doing differently per se, but going to Winston-Salem after that big win against Duke, which it was a big win. Say what you want about Duke. That was a big win for Florida State. I think I'm going to take Wake.
Okay, I
maybe
like it.
maybe Santino Marucci has something for these guys.
Mm.
I'm going to take Wake plus 20.5. OU at Kansas. Dangerous spot for the Sooners. They've been
Ve-
flying high. They almost gave it up against UCF. Kansas 10.5-point underdogs. I think OU that kind of lights a fire and they go
Yeah.
out and they crush in this game.
If this was, I would go Kansas. If it didn't, OU almost didn't, take it on the chin against in that UCF game. I think they'll bounce back, renewed focus, that sort of thing in this game. So I think I'm going OU.
World's largest outdoor cocktail party, Georgia and Florida. Florida 14.5-point underdogs in this one. Big line. This game is kind of like Red River in my experience, where no matter what, it ends up being a tight game. Now, we have seen some that haven't been as of late, but I'm going to take Florida. I'm going to take the points.
I have Florida as well. Just given the moment and the event of the game, I think it'll end up being a closer one than it probably would be otherwise.
And Florida is just one spot outside the top 25.
It's
JMU took that
crazy.
number 25 spot, but
Yep.
Florida, they only have 2 losses. One of them was to a good Utah team. They did get
Mhm.
spanked by Kentucky, but nevertheless,
Yep.
they can play a little bit. We'll see what happens. Oregon at Utah. Rice Eccles, hardest place to win in the country. 6.5-point home dogs are the Utes. I'll let you go first this time.
I'm going with Oregon. I know it is an extremely tough place to play, but I think this Oregon team really they've got it this year, and I think they keep it rolling and cover that 6.5. The hook worries me, but I think they can pull it out.
Utah probably should have lost last week.
Yep.
Barnes made some great plays down the stretch, got maybe a lucky call here or there. Utah is good. I think Oregon also covers by a touchdown. Oregon. Ohio State at Wisconsin. Wisconsin, 14.5-point underdogs. They lost that game to Iowa. Iowa turned right around and lost 12-10 to Minnesota. Another game with a questionable call. A lot of weird calls in college football this past week. But thoughts on Wisconsin, 14.5-point underdogs at home against Ohio State? I'm taking Wisconsin.
Ooh, I'm going to go Ohio State. Yeah, I was very surprised in the outcome of that Penn State game. I didn't. I I
They were
really
ready.
believed in Penn State's offense, and Ohio State managed to shut them down. And if they can do that against Penn State in that running attack and what they've got going on there, then I think they can do it this week. So I'm actually going with the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I'm picking Wisconsin largely because of the come down. Because that Penn State game was hyped, and we both liked Penn State to cover, maybe
Yep.
even win. And their offense didn't show. That
Yep.
dink and dunk offense that we talked about,
Mhm.
it stinks. Like, it was bad against a good defense. It was bad, and Ohio State does have a good defense. I just feel like the spot is right for Wisconsin to cover. I think Ohio State probably escapes, but
Okay.
that'll do it for picks, and that's going to do it for the podcast. I am waking up tomorrow, packing my bags, and leaving for Blacksburg. I should be down there around dinner time. I think I've got a
Yeah.
date at the Cellar. I'm,
Ooh,
I'm ready,
best
man.
best beer selection in Blacksburg, right
Great.
there.
They got it. It's between Rivermill and them, right? They both have really good selections.
Yep.
Rivermill, I'm not sure what Rivermill's like these days, but every time I would go in there with you or whatever, it's packed to the gills, right?
So packed, and they do have a great beer selection, but it's very it's all over the place. Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you don't know what you're gonna get walking into there. Like the cellar, you're gonna have some really good fallback beers
Yeah.
that you're gonna have there. And Rivermill usually has some, and oftentimes sometimes they would have some like double IPAs, and I'd be like, why would they have that on draft? And other times I would be pleasantly surprised and sometimes a little bit disappointed. So it really just depends on the week that you catch them.
The other thing that's good about the Cellar with their beer selection is they have the fridges because they
Hmm.
have their taps, which they don't have the most taps in town or anything, but they
No,
have all that fridge selection, which is awesome.
that's
So
the
if
killer.
you want
That's the killer.
taps, you go to Mellow Mushroom or something because they
Yes.
have like that whole line of
A
taps.
huge line of them. Yeah, the bottles that you can get, I think, at the cellar are what really does it.
Anyway, I'm excited. I hope that I don't live up to Sarah and Andrew Berlin's curse of going to games. I mean, we lost a lot of games without me in Blacksburg this year. So,
Oh no! Yes, at least it's not one of those seasons where you're like hoping you don't break anything, right? Like,
right. We're undefeated, and then I go to a game and we lose.
yeah, it was already broken. It's on the mend, so nobody would be surprised if an L happens.
Well, I'm glad you got in here, Rob, because I had to pull the trigger on this pod because I'm leaving early tomorrow.
Yep.
You made it. Your commentary is always so good and so welcome. So thank you. And I will be back. We will be back next week to recap what is hopefully a big win against Syracuse. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, Sons of Saturday Podcast VT. You'll find it on just Google something like that. You will find the Sons of Saturday YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Two Deep feed at Two Deep VT on Twitter, twodeepvt@gmail.com. And if you're on Spotify, it's so easy to leave a review. You literally click the thing and click a 5-star. That would be awesome. We could use some more reviews on Spotify. And until next time, go Hokies.